In this video, we are going to learn from a chess game played by Capablanca, and this is really an amazing game to learn from. Capablanca ended up getting a 98.8% accuracy with a brilliant move, so definitely stick around. There is so much that you can learn from this game. And this game is really going to demonstrate what I always try to teach, which is to play simple chess. And this is something that everybody should be able to do, although there are some genius moves in the end, as we are going to see. So white plays e4, black plays e5. And what we are going to see in this game is that we are going to get a very symmetrical game. White plays knight to f3, black plays knight to c6, and then Capablanca plays knight to c3, which is the three knights opening. The way that you can remember this is, of course, because we have three knights on the board. And this opening is nowadays not so popular anymore, because this is basically inviting black to turn it into a four knights game, and then this is very, very symmetrical. White plays bishop to b5 as a development move. This also, of course, attacks the knight, which might make it possible in some lines to take, and then also, of course, try to win the pawn in the center. And black, of course, just says anything you can do, I can do as well. So black plays bishop to b4, attacking our knight. You might be wondering, can we actually take this here? Yes. Can we take that pawn in the center? Yes. But of course, the downside with having a very symmetrical position is that anything you could think about, your opponent could do too. But black has to be careful here, because if they play it in this exact way, we are going to get a check and a fork. So basically what black has to do is first trade the queens, and then they can play knight takes e4. So we just have a very, very symmetrical position. Both players castle, white plays d3, and black plays pawn to d6. And this is where things are going to get interesting. What do you have to do whenever you have a symmetrical position? Well, you basically have to try to create an imbalance in the position, meaning a difference in the position. And then based on what difference you were able to create, you can try to find a middle game plan. Capablanca plays the move bishop to g5. And here black decided for the first moment in this game to not copy white and to not play the move bishop to g4. Instead, black played knight to e7, which might look very strange if you have never seen this opening before. But as you can see, this move has the book icon, so this is a book move, a standard move in this position. It unpins this knight, and it also might allow for this knight to reroute, to maybe go here, and also for the pawn to go to c6. And it looks like white just has a simple plan here. You can take the knight, they take back, and yeah, the king looks exposed, right? There should be something here. But this position has been studied, and there is not really anything here. I mean, the king is a bit exposed, yes, but how are we going to use that? It's not really easy for us to get any pieces there. Maybe we play knight h4, but the king can even just move sideways, and yeah, the queen cannot really do anything there. There's nothing really going on because we lack enough pieces to attack. So knight e7 is a very interesting move. Hard to understand if you haven't studied it, but I hope this makes sense that white actually shouldn't really take. You can take, of course, but it doesn't really lead to a winning position. And Capablanca plays the move knight to h4, which is very interesting because we are already starting to create some imbalances. And what we are going to see in this game is that Capablanca is going to try to attack the opponent, but the attack is a very beautiful, sophisticated, strategical attack. It's not really a reckless, I try to checkmate you as fast as I can attack, which is, I think, a beautiful example of how you can play attacking chess without really taking any risks. So knight to h4, and black plays king h8, which you might think is a little bit odd, but of course black sees that there's an attack coming, so they already go ahead and move the king. This would help them in case we do take the knight, then they are actually going to be more quick also with the move rook to g8, because that square is already freed up. Okay. And what Capablanca is going to do from here, which I think you can also try to mimic in your own games, is to just slowly get all of his pieces into attacking positions. So we already have a bishop and a knight that's close to the enemy king. All we need to do is get more pieces close to the enemy king, or at least participating in some way with the attack. And Capablanca here plays the move bishop to c4, which is a very interesting move, because this is now a bishop that's also participating in the attack on this pawn. And if the rook were to ever go there, well, of course, pretty obviously, they would be losing the pawn on f7. So this is helping us with the strategy that, yes, maybe we can take and try something, and the rook won't be able to go to g8. Plus, of course, we are just adding an extra piece into the attack. Black plays c6, which is very logical because they want to get rid of this bishop by either playing something with b5, a5, a4, or maybe play the move pawn to d5, which would completely lock this diagonal for the bishop. All right. And the question is, how can we get more pieces into the attack? So we already have a knight, bishop, and bishop into the attack. It's very unlikely that this knight here on the blue square is ever going to be able to participate in the attack, but we still need to get more pieces into the game. What move could we play? There is a very smart move that Capablanca played here, pawn to f4. And oftentimes they tell beginner chess players, don't open up any diagonals towards your king, because that might lead to trouble, which is in general a very good rule to follow. In this game, Black also played an immediate check on this diagonal. But of course, this specific diagonal and this particular position is not really a problem. Well, why is that? If Black checks us, we can just put the king in the corner. And sometimes this could still be trouble, yes, if the position is quite open and if Black has some big opportunities to suddenly get a bunch of pieces attacking our king. But we have so many of our own pieces here around our king, and the center is actually quite closed, so it's going to be quite difficult for Black to start an attack here. However, Black is going to try. Black is going to try to use the fact that our king is here a little bit exposed to attack. And I think this is really the most important moment in the game, although this is not where the brilliant move happened, because here we have to make a decision. We either have to start playing defensively, or we have to go all out with the attack. Whenever your opponent makes a move, it's of course very logical to always first look what are they trying to do. Imagine if I played a bit of a do nothing move. What would my opponent do? Well, they would be giving us a check. They would be forking king and queen, and of course we would have to sacrifice our rook in case if we want to stop that. So Black is really coming at us. And we have to make a strategic decision here. We either have to try to find a way to defend this, or we have to continue attacking. But how do you really prevent this? You could maybe think about a move like queen to d2, because queen to d2 looks logical, right? We are preventing them from giving the check, but we are forgetting about something here. White has another problem. And to find this problem, one of my favorite things to do is whenever my opponent makes a move, I sometimes even go back and forth to see what are they really doing with this move. Wow, it attacked this square, but it also freed up this square. So if we play the move queen to d2, Black has pawn to f6 and the bishop is trapped. So pretty much we are being threatened with a fork where we have to give up an exchange, but we are also being threatened that we might lose our bishop. So Capablanca decides to just go forwards with the plan. We are going to play pawn to f5, advancing the pawn, giving the diagonal back to the bishop, so the bishop can also go back. Black was happy because Black can give a check and Black can win material, but this is actually not such a great line for Black, and I hope you can also see the evaluation bar has just completely turned white here on the left side of the screen. Why is that? It's very important when you play chess to understand that pieces have a relative value. A difficult word for basically saying the value of a piece depends entirely on the position. And that knight that our opponent just gave away for a rook, that knight was an important defender around the king. That knight was also blocking that f6 square, so nothing could happen, and if we ever took, there would be a pawn that's coming in the place of that knight. The bishop is also actually not really doing that much anymore, and suddenly, even though we are down material, the white pieces are very active. Like these pieces are active because that knight is gone. Or queen might even be able to infiltrate by going here. So we have a lot of pieces near the king. And most of the black pieces are passive. Like, look at these pieces. None of them are really doing much. And that's why white is winning here. But there's only one move that white can use to try to win this game. Pawn to f6. Pawn to f6 attacks the knight, and it might also help to try to open up the king, because we need to open up the king, because we need to attack. We are already down the exchange, so we need to attack pawn to f6. There are a bunch of things that can happen here. I think an interesting move for black to consider would be bishop takes h4. If they play bishop takes h4, we do have pawn takes e7. It's still difficult for black, but black can play queen takes e7, bishop takes e7, bishop takes e7. And you might think, wait a minute, did black just sacrifice the queen? Yes, but it's probably the best thing that they can do in this position anyways, because they're already under so much pressure. But finding that move and playing that move, that's nearly impossible. Black takes on f6, but of course this allows white to take on f6, and now this king is in some trouble. This is the only legal move, and the king is basically already stuck. If only we could try to give some type of check to the queen, to the king, with the queen, like here, that would just be amazing. That might even lead to a checkmate, or it might force the knight to move so that we can win the queen. This move is impossible. Whenever you have a plan in chess, and it looks like your plan is impossible, don't just give up. Try to make it possible with your next move. And that is why Capablanca played knight to f5. And knight to f5 is of course a genius move. First of all, the check from the queen becomes possible, but second of all, there is also a checkmate threat here. A checkmate threat by just simply playing knight to h6. That would be a beautiful, beautiful checkmate. And the way that you can find these types of moves in your own games is just that you want to think, especially in these types of positions where you are doing an attack, how can I just keep bringing pieces closer to my enemy king? Because the closer your pieces are, the more pieces you have close by to their king, the bigger the chance that you will eventually have some type of tactic. Okay. Of course, black has to exchange the bishop for the knight, because otherwise, well, they are just in a lot of trouble in any position, or they could even be checkmated. This pawn is not hanging because, well, the queen is hanging, and they would also be checkmated in case they take that. So it's a bit of trouble. Black is basically lost no matter what, but black still tries to continue fighting by playing the move queen to d7, unpinning the queen, which makes it possible for the knight to try to defend and also try to take back that pawn. Whenever you are looking for good moves, you always just have to go through the CCT steps. Look at every check, look at every capture, and look at every threat. That's also what Capablanca has been doing here. Checks, captures, and threats. Checks, captures, and threats. That is the plan. You always need to do it in this order as well. The checks have the highest priority, then the captures, then the threats. What check do we have here? Of course, queen to g4, which it's technically checkmate. The king cannot do anything. Not really checkmate, because of course knight to g6 is possible, but that is not really a move that you want to play. The beauty, of course, with the move knight to g6, this was a genius defensive plan from black, is that we cannot simply take the pawn and get carried away with our own plan, because you would be losing your queen. So that's a good defensive move. But even if your opponent finds good defensive moves, we should still be able to keep attacking here. So try to remember what we talked about. We just want to get more pieces closer to the king and get the pieces that are already present to go closer to the king. What can we do? Well, there are a bunch of great moves here, but Capablanca found quite an amazing move. Queen to h5. And the reason why this move is so good is, first of all, yes, we are now threatening to win the knight because we just moved the queen away from that diagonal. Second of all, that's just a checkmate and two threat, basically. And it's, yeah, impossible, basically, for them to stop it. Yes, black can prolong the game a little bit, but black is not going to really be able to stop it. Black plays, I think, the most sensible move. Bishop to e3, saying, look, I am going to prevent you from going to the checkmate. Black has to play this. Well, now, of course, we have pawn takes knight. Very logical. We can just take this knight. And it's a lot of trouble for black. If black takes this way, that's checkmate. Which is very nice. Actually, Queen takes g6 is also checkmate. Look at this. That bishop is actually very useful on this diagonal. This checkmate works as well. And this pawn cannot take, of course, because that pawn is pinned. So what is black to do here? Like, it looks like black cannot really do anything. They played pawn h6, which is actually the move that's going to make the game even longer. And pawn to h6 is a smart move. Don't think that we can just take this with the queen and go for checkmate, because you would be forgetting that bishops can move backwards. And I've seen this with a lot of people. Sometimes you just forget that pieces can go backwards. What I always try to say is, whenever your opponent has a piece on your side of the board, meaning the first 4 ranks, please just get rid of it. It's trouble, and your mind is also not really used to pieces being on your side of the board. So it's like your vision is focused on all of this, but you forget that there is that piece on your side of the board that can move backwards as well. Okay. And the next move that Capablanca played is a completely genius move. You won't have to play this to win the game. There are so many ways to win the game, but the move is incredibly genius. Capablanca was just thinking, this bishop is the annoying piece. How can I get rid of that bishop? And he played the brilliant move knight to d5, which I think this move is just incredible. Knight to d5, of course, it attacks the bishop. So black has to deal with it, but you might be thinking, wait a minute, knight to d5, doesn't black just take that knight? Well, yes, they take that knight, and then we just take with the bishop. And the beauty from this move is that by playing this sequence, we were able to prevent black from playing d5 themselves. Because d5 would be a good move for black, because they would be attacking the bishop, bishop has to move, and they also eliminate the diagonal for the bishop. So they are basically eliminating one of our attackers. And this is a move that white really had to deal with this, because, well, one, their bishop is attacked, and if they move back the bishop, there is knight to e7, which would be a checkmate if not for the queen that can sacrifice itself. So basically taking that knight is mandatory. Black has to do this. And white just simply takes with the bishop, and white says, look, my bishop is on d5, so you are not going to be playing pawn to d5 anymore. This diagonal is mine for the rest of the game. And that king is completely trapped, because the dark squares are in our control, the light square is in our control, and that pawn can never move. Plus, we have 3 attackers facing off against the f7 pawn as well. So in case they think about like moving the rook somewhere, maybe let's say this as a more logical square, yeah, we take that with a check, and it's going to be devastating as well. So yeah, black just doesn't have any moves that they can play here. They play rook to c8, and everything wins here for white. You can for sure take here and continue the game. Capablanca just said, you know what? We have one piece that's not participating in the game. Let's just bring that piece into the game as well, which I think is the key takeaway from this game. Just keep adding pieces to the attack. Black plays rook c2. Of course, they just don't have a single move. That doesn't lose them the game. And here we just have a simple winning sequence. Pawn takes f7, which is devastating. If the king goes here, there is bishop e4 with a check, and the queen has to block. The queen has to block here, and that is a mate, or a mate with the queen as well. So yeah, basically the king cannot move, so they have to do something. They have to capture this. Of course, you don't want to capture it with your queen, or you would be losing the queen, so you just capture it with your rook. But now, this bishop is really the star player this entire game. Queen g6 check, queen g6 check. And you might be thinking, well, why didn't Capablanca just take? You could take, you could trade, you could do a bunch of things. But queen to g6 is just beautiful, because that king only has one legal move, and that's all they can do. And then Capablanca played bishop to f7, and that is here also where black just resigned, because black just lost the rook, and there is actually nothing that they can do. If they take this bishop, there is bishop to g7, which is a check, and also now this rook comes into play. So yeah, the king has to move, and then you can take this with a check, and the game is just over from there. So the huge lesson from this game, when you are attacking, just keep adding pieces to the attack. Get the pieces you already have closer to the enemy king, and try to prevent any counterplay. Like here, the counterplay of d5 was completely prevented. If you enjoyed this, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.